Welcome to Celtic Medicine Stories, a podcast where we explore stories from the old Celtic lands, with the understanding that they carry medicine for us. I'm your host, Kat Horton, and I offer these stories in the spirit of the oral storytelling tradition of the British Isles. That is, they are free and they're open to everyone, always. Although these stories often have come from another time and have evolved through time with the oral storytelling tradition, they are here still for a reason. If you're curious about going deeper with this story, with the images, symbols, characters, landscapes, sounds, whatever it is that's speaking to you from this particular story, then there are some free resources below which will help guide you in that process. This story from Ireland is from one of the deep layers of Celtic mythology. If you listen to the previous episode with the Welsh story of the Birth of Taliesin, you'll see the similarities between these two tales that suggest an older foundational myth. It's an iconic Celtic tale of the crossing between the two worlds, ordinary reality and the place of all wisdom. And here it happens in one defining moment of enlightenment. The story forms the early beginnings of the large collection of myths and folktales known as the Fianna Cycle that comes from the 3rd century of the Common Era. The 3rd century. These tales were and still are told across Ireland and the west of Scotland. They call forth a long Celtic oral tradition of wonder and magic. I hope you enjoy it. So as you listen to this story, as with all these Celtic medicine stories, let yourself float. You don't need to pay attention in the way maybe you were asked to do in school. You don't need to try and follow the plot line or the dialogue or anything in particular. In fact, the medicine lies in what you find yourself attending to. So when you let yourself go into that receptive, floaty state and you find your mind wanting to savor an image or a sound or a word, and you find yourself more engaged with that than whatever it is that I'm saying, then notice that. You don't need to analyze it or try and figure it out in that moment, but just notice it, that called your attention, because that's where the medicine lies. Wherever this story interacts with your story is what you're looking for. And I believe this is part of why these stories have been around for so long, is because they each interact with us in some special way. And so as you listen, just let yourself absorb it and notice which parts stick out to you. A long, long time ago, where the emerald rolling hills meet the crashing Atlantic Ocean in the land we now call Ireland. Woven through the trees and the valleys and the glens, there could be found from time to time, if you were lucky, a roving band of warriors. We know them as the Fianna. They were there in defense of the land and also to sing the land through their beautiful poets. Now for some time, the head of the Fianna was cool, and he did a grand job. And everyone supported him as the head of the Fianna. And at some point in his life, he fell in love with Myrna, who happened to be the daughter of the High Druid of Ireland. Now, he didn't like this, the High Druid. He was not in favour of Myrna becoming wed to Cool. So in a long unfolding story, Cool ended up being killed and Myrna went into hiding. It turns out she was pregnant. She went into hiding with 2 friends, 2 women who lived together out in the woods, a druid and a hunter. And in time she gave birth to a little one that she named Finn. This Finn, beautiful, radiant, golden-haired, blue-eyed boy, she left to be raised by the druid and the hunter in the woods as she went off to pursue her own destiny. After some time, 12 years or so, this young boy, Finn, discovers the truth of who he is, and the hunter and the druid who have raised him send him out on his path of destiny, and they tell him 2 things. 1, don't tell anyone your name, and 2, seek Finnegas, the old man who lives on the edge of the River Boyne. And so off he went. Now Finn wanders in all directions through Ireland, to the north, to the south, to the east, to the west, gathering stories, seeking teachers, finding rivers, until eventually he finds the River Boyne. This beautiful, beautiful river in Ireland. He follows it upstream as it gets narrower and narrower and narrower, until he gets right up there into the hills, where there is a big pool surrounded by 9 hazel trees. And right there on the edge of the pool he finds Finnegas. Now Finnegas is sitting as still as a rock, his grey beard so long it seems to merge into the grass beneath him, his cloak the colour of lichen huddled over his shoulders as he stares intently into the pool. And Finn stops and watches him for some time. Finnegas barely moves. He's barely sure that he's alive. You can see a little bit his chest rising and falling as he breathes, but his intent on that pool is unwavering. Eventually Finn moves a little closer and he says, "Excuse me, I've come to help you. I can help you with the camp. I can help you. What are you doing? Why are you staring at the pool?" And Finnegas slowly turns towards him. And he says, "I'm waiting for the salmon." "What salmon?" "The salmon of wisdom. You see, he lives in this pool. You know what those trees are?" "Yes, they're hazels." "Right. And so they drop hazelnuts into the pool, and every time the salmon eats a hazelnut, which he's been doing for countless years, he gains more wisdom. And this salmon holds all the wisdom of all the world, and I am going to eat him." Said Finn. "Well, what do you want with all the wisdom of all the world?" And Finnegas said, "Poetry. When I have all the wisdom of all the world, I will be able to sing the most beautiful poetry anyone has ever heard." So Finn said, "Well, okay then. Well, I'll help you. My name is Deme. I'm here I can cook for you. I can keep the camp. I can, whatever you need. I'll just be here to help you." And Finnegas nodded and went back to staring into the pool. And so their time passed. It was spring turned into summer, which turned into autumn, into winter, and into spring. And Finn did just as he said he would. He carried water, and he chopped wood, and he made food, and he kept the camp clean, so that Finnegas all day long could sit at the edge of the pool at the top of the Boyne and stare. And oftentimes he'd get his fishing rod and he'd throw a line in, but to no avail. One evening, Finn stepped away from the fire over to the pool to see what Finnegas was doing, and in the moonlight he could see glistening at the very top of the pool, he could see the silver scales of the salmon as it peeked its eyes out over the surface of the water as if to stare at Finnegas, the two of them held entranced by each other in this death dance they were performing. And the salmon looped back down, casting a few gentle ripples across the surface of the pool. Finnegas continued to stare at the pool. Now one day was autumn. The leaves were golden. The breeze was brisk. There was a slight bite in the air. And Finn heard a great ruckus coming from the pool. "I've got him! I've got him! Look! I've got him!" As Finnegas hurled his fishing rod out of the pool, and the huge salmon came flopping down onto the grass beside him. Enormous fish. Finn had never seen anything like it. With one swift pull of his knife, Finnegas had slit its throat, and its flappings decreased till it was still You did it. I did it. Finnegas looked completely shocked and exhausted. He said, "Here, Finn, you cook it. Take it. Build a fire up. Cook this fish. I must rest. I'm exhausted. This has been years I've been doing this. I need to go and sleep. Now, Finn, don't touch the salmon. Just get it on a tray. Put it over the fire. Do not, under any circumstances, eat any of this. Okay? You got to wait for me. I'm going to consume it." "Yes, absolutely. I will get this fire built up." And so off Finnegas goes to sleep. And within an hour or so, the fire is going, it's roaring. He's got all sorts of wood on there, and he's rigged up the cooking equipment. He's got this iron rack over the fire, and he's got the fish on it. It's huge. It took quite a lot to lift it up onto the rack. And it's starting to bubble, starting to smell really good. The skin is bubbling and crackling, and Finn's sitting there poking the fire and watching it. He's doing a great job. And as time goes on, he starts to see this bubble of liquid forming on the skin that's starting to crisp, and he's fascinated by it. He's watching it. And in an instant, that bubble bursts and sends 3 drops of scalding hot liquid onto his thumb, which instinctively, without even thinking, he pops into his mouth. And suddenly all that ever was and all that is and all that ever will be rushes through him. His body now electric with the movement of wisdom, of consciousness that is flowing through his nervous system. Everything. He is the trees. He's the breeze. He's the stars. He's the sun. He's the soil. He's an earthworm. He's an otter. He's an eagle. He is all of it. Everything in his body. He can hear the leaves crackling. He can hear the stars piercing through the darkness. He can feel the water flowing from the pool down to the ocean. He pulls his thumb out of his mouth. Oh, what just happened? He came back into his ordinary reality. With this shocked look on his face, Finnegas stumbles towards him. "What did you do? Did you taste it?" He didn't need to ask. He could tell by the look on Finn's face, by the stunned look, that he had indeed tasted it. So Finnegas says, "I told you not to. But you did it, Finn McCool. You did it because this salmon was always meant for you. That's what the prophecy said." Finn just continued to look stunned. "All I ask of you," said Finnegas, "is that you use some of this wisdom, please, just some of it, for the making of poetry." Finn nodded. Yes, of course I will do that." "What about you, Finnegas? What are you going to do now?" And Finnegas shook his head, he gathered up his bedroll, and he walked off into the forest. Now from that day on, Finn, whenever he needed the answer to something, all he had to do was put his thumb in his mouth, and it would be revealed to him. And so that's what he did. He put his thumb in his mouth, and he was told that he needed to go right to the center of Ireland, to the hill of Tara. So off he went. Thank you for listening to this episode of Celtic Medicine Stories. If you want to go deeper, check out my Working with Archetypes free email course. There's a link somewhere in these notes. You'll find it. And feel free to visit on my website, kathorton.com, KATHOUGHTON.com. I'd love to hear from you. Go well.